Okay, we are going to cover midterm 2, Math 1060 at Salt Lake Community College. This is trigonometry. This was a little bit low of an average, so I wanted to make sure to show you everything that I can in a video format so that you do better on the final. So let's work this key out. So starting, rewrite the quantity as algebraic expressions of x. Now, first off, this is kind of an unusual instruction. Algebraic means algebra, add, subtract, multiply, divide, and variables. It does not include trigonometry. So sine, arctangent, not algebraic. Wow, so how do we do this? Well, first off, sine accepts an angle. Sine of an angle, sine of pi halves, etc. So this is an angle. Let's call it theta. So theta equals arctangent of x. If I take tangent of both sides, I get tangent theta equals x. I can represent this angle with a triangle, theta. Now tangent is opposite over adjacent, and I can write it x over 1. So this is x and 1. Pythagorean Theorem says the hypotenuse is the sum of the squares of the other two sides, the square root of the sum of the other two sides, x squared plus 1. Okay, so that's our setup for the angle theta. We want sine of theta, which is opposite over hypotenuse, which from theta's perspective, the opposite is x, and the hypotenuse is square root of x squared plus 1. Now if you look at this expression, it's add, subtract, multiply, divide, square root, squares, fractions. This is all algebraic. This is what is meant by rewrite the quantity as algebraic expressions of x. All right, let's move on to the next one. Find all values of theta in 0 to 360 that satisfy the equation cosine theta equals 1/2. So we're talking about degrees, so a degree answer is appropriate. Where is cosine 1/2? That's at 60 degrees. Now all students take calculus, also positive at 300 degrees. That's it. So this is a matter of knowing your unit circle and your angles, and that's that. Let's move on. So this is for problem 3 and 4. Find the exact value of the expressions in degrees. Arctangent, square root of 3 over 3. So first off, arctangent lives between negative pi halves, all values of arctangent, and pi halves. So we're looking for an angle between negative 90 and positive 90, or negative pi halves and positive 9 halves. Now I happen to know from the unit circle, and I hope you do too, tangent of 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 3. And 30 degrees, funny, I wrote in degrees. Let's change this to be 90 degrees also. And so our answer of 30 degrees fits within where arctangent lives. So the answer is just 30 degrees. Okay, know the unit circle. Arc secant. Okay, we can change to arc cosine, which might be a little more recognizable by flipping the inside. You can also write this as square root of 2 over 2. Now, where does arc cosine live? Arc cosine lives between 0 and 180 degrees. If you think about the all students take calculus, in the first quadrant, sine or cosine is positive. In the second quadrant, cosine is negative. So that accompanies a positive and a negative answer, which is what we get when we do arc cosines. Where it's negative is in the second quadrant, where sine is positive. So now, where is arc cosine? 1 over square root of 2, that is pi fourths, so 45 degrees. And the negative puts us in the second quadrant, so essentially 45 degrees, quadrant 2, that gives us 135 degrees. So the 45 degrees is the reference angle And in quadrant 2, that's 135. So we're looking at that value right there. All right. So it's important to know where the arc functions live. Now, very clearly a mistake. If you get two answers for any arc sine, arc cosine question, these are functions. You should only get one answer for one input, one output. Okay, number 5. Find all real numbers in the interval 0 to 2 pi, so we're looking for radians now, to satisfy the equation cosine x equals sine x. Now, with dealing with trigonometric equations, in my experience, have found it easier to deal with one trig function rather than two trig functions. So if I were to just divide by cosine of x on both sides, assuming x doesn't equal 0, and we'll have to check that, we get 1 equals tangent x. Now, where does tangent equal 1? That's at pi fourths. All students take calculus, take also 5 pi fourths. Those would be the answers. So x, that's our variable, x equals pi fourths and 5 pi fourths. And let's double check these. At pi fourths, cosine is square root of 2 over 2, sine is square root of 2 over 2, they're equal. In the third quadrant, only tangent's positive, so sine and cosine are negative. So at 5 pi fourths, this would be negative square root of 2 over 2 equals negative square root of 2 over 2. They satisfy just fine. Here we have our two solutions. Okay, that completes part 1 of this midterm. Next up is part 2 in a second video. Hope this helps.